Good evening from New York. In a moment, I'll bring you today's developments in D.C. in the fight to bring about meaningful health care reform in the U.S. and also the Republican plan. But first, the polls are closed in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. And for the latest, please give your attention now to my colleague, Lawrence O'Donnell. Lawrence?
Thank you, Keith. This so-called off-year election has offered a number of interesting races, contests that are being closely watched for what they might say about the Obama presidency, and a Republican Party that lost its control of the White House 1 year ago tomorrow night. Our fifth story on the countdown, the races and results you need to know about. We begin with the latest. In upstate New York, all eyes on the race for the 23rd Congressional District. Still no call 1 hour after polls closed. Heading into today's vote, Democrat Bill Owens was thought to be trailing conservative Doug Hoffman. Republican Didi Skazafava still on the ballot after dropping out of the race over the weekend. The New Jersey governor's race between incumbent Democrat John Corzine and Republican Chris Christie still too close to call 2 hours after poll closings in the Garden State. And in Virginia, Republican Bob McDonnell projected as the winner in the governor's race there, beating out his opponent, Democrat Creigh Deeds. In his concession speech, Mr. Deeds said that while the race might be over, the work is not.
We have challenges ahead. Those challenges aren't disappearing just because we didn't get the result we wanted tonight. We've got the same work ahead of us. Just because we didn't get the right result tonight doesn't mean we get to go home and whine. We've got to keep working and keep fighting.
One name that did not appear on any ballot anywhere today, Barack Obama. But that hasn't stopped Republicans from trying to make today's races a referendum on the White House. Our MSNBC exit polls seem to indicate that President Obama was not a factor in Virginia and New Jersey governor's races. 18% of the voters we surveyed in Virginia told us they used their vote in part to support President Obama. 24% said their vote today expressed opposition to the president. But a majority, 56%, indicated that the president did not enter into their decision at all. In New Jersey, even fewer voters told us that their view of the president impacted their vote for governor. 20% voted to express their support for President Obama. 19% voted to register opposition to the White House. 6 in 10 voters, 60%, said that the president was not a factor at all in their decision. Voters in New Jersey and Virginia less worried about sending a message to the White House than they are about the state of the economy. 33% in New Jersey named the economy and jobs as the top issue impacting today's vote for governor. In Virginia, that number is 47%. Lots to talk about tonight with MSNBC's very own Chris Matthews, host of Hardball. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Lawrence, thank you.
Chris, what happened to President Obama tonight in this election? What is the real Obama factor
Well,
here?
I think if we see a Democrat lose the governorship of New Jersey, it will be counted against him. But I think there are other forces at work. I think there's a tremendous pushback, that's the new term in American life, against big, piggish money in American politics. If Michael Bloomberg can't buy a clean victory for his third term as mayor of New York, money doesn't buy you love.
He's right now running closer than
very
anyone's
close
dreamed.
against a guy who is not a big name, Thompson, a Democrat, but Bloomberg is a pretty popular mayor, a pretty effective mayor, but he spent a ton of money. He and Corzine, the governor of New Jersey, have spent almost $400 million of personal money in recent years to buy public office, and with it they think public acclaim. Well, it's not working, and I think it's interesting. If Corzine goes down tonight and Bloomberg has to fight for his life, that tells you that people have had it. It's almost like the New York Yankees thinking you can buy talent and perhaps a World Series with a lot of money. Well, maybe you can, but the voters have a say here.
Is it a stretch to suggest that the drop in support for Corzine in New Jersey and apparently a drop in support for Michael Bloomberg in New York has something to do with their Wall Street histories? That this was not the year to be on the ballot with Wall Street on your previous resume?
I mentioned to you this before the air tonight, and I think it's very important. 20 years ago, I covered the fall of the Berlin Wall, and I interviewed working people behind the Iron Curtain. These are not bad people. They were factory managers, school principals. They believed in socialism. They thought it would work, and they were screwed by the system. These are the true believers. What's going on in American life today, I believe the true believers in American free enterprise see what's happening on Wall Street with the bailouts and the piggishness and the government support for it. And they're saying, wait a minute, I believe in free enterprise. I'm the one getting screwed here. The cynics will always say, well, that's the way it is. They'll never change their attitudes. But the true believers in America will say, wait a minute, this isn't my country. Why is the president, a liberal Democrat, going along with this? Why is he joining the bailout boys? What's going on here? They've had profits at Goldman this last quarter of $3.1 billion. They've had enormous success in terms of bonuses, $140 million distributed, $1 billion distributed instead of $130 billion last year. They're having a hell of a time up there off the government tit.
Chris,
and people were saying, wait a minute, we're paying for this? It's bad enough they're slopping around in the hog trough. Why are we paying for it? And I think the debt is, you throw in the debt where the country's debt is getting bigger. And my daughter's involved with this. Young people are getting wise to this, the amount of government debt out there. And they're saying, wait a minute, our kids are going to pay for these people up in New York having a great time. And I think they look at Bloomberg, I think they look at Corzine and say, you're part of the problem.
You worked in the House for Tip O'Neill, the Speaker, putting the members through tough votes at different times. They have the toughest vote of the year coming up, maybe a week after this election, on health care reform. How does tonight affect that vote in the House of Representatives?
You have to wonder, and I support health care reform. I think we've got to get progress and make a big commitment. You got to wonder if you're Blanche Lincoln down in Arkansas, who's facing a tremendous uphill battle. She's got a state that voted for John McCain in a worst year. Her numbers are not good. She must watch what happens in New Jersey, what happens in Virginia, and say, wait a minute, if they're tough up north, they're going to be even tougher down here. In Louisiana, people like that, Mary Landrieu, Mark Pryor down in Arkansas, people out in Nebraska. I got to believe that the ones that are tough are still tough to get.
But doesn't the leadership,
still tough to get those votes.
Leadership then bring her our exit polls and say, look, Obama was not a factor in these losses in Virginia?
You know, people are slow to admit that the vote on the ballot isn't what they cast. They're not going to admit I voted like some voodoo doll to hurt some Democratic candidate because I didn't like Barack Obama. It sounds somewhat undemocratic. So they'll say, of course, I voted for the name on the ballot. But in their head is, how do I feel about today? Voters vote their conditions. If the economy is lousy, they're feeling lousy. They don't like the politicians. It's human nature.
Chris Matthews, the Dean of MSNBC Election Night Coverage.
Well, we're here, aren't we?
Thank you for joining me here tonight.
It's great to be over here.